The former Rockdale County Sheriff's deputy was under investigation when she resigned last month. Police say she shot and killed a man just days later.
I heard like one shot. I didn't know anything else until a bunch of cops was out here asking questions, going door to door.
What drives a respected law enforcement officer to walk away from her career for the man she loves? 𝐬𝐿 was a rising star in the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office, celebrated as an exemplary deputy, but her relationship with Terrell Douglas, a man with a criminal past, would lead to a decision that shocked everyone. Just days after resigning her badge, she would be accused of ending his life. What happened in those final moments, and why did it all unravel so quickly? Stay with us as we uncover a story that left a community searching for answers. Welcome to True Crime Anatomy, the channel where we only narrate complete stories based on true crime and uncover the truth behind real-life crime stories you've never seen or heard before. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we work every day to bring you the most compelling stories from the world of true crime. 𝐬𝐿 was the kind of officer you'd expect to see rise through the ranks, a dedicated deputy who earned respect from her peers and the public alike. Recognized as Employee of the Month, her career seemed destined for success. But behind her badge was a personal life entangled with Terrell Douglas, a man with a long arrest record and a reputation that clashed with the law she swore to uphold. Their connection began in 2018, a relationship marked by turmoil and warnings from her department to end the romance, or face consequences. In May of 2023, 𝐬𝐿 made her choice. She resigned from her post just days before a fateful confrontation that would leave Terrell Douglas dead from a gunshot wound, and 𝐬𝐿 accused of murder. How did this once promising deputy find herself at the center of such a devastating crime? Stay with us as we unravel this gripping story of love, defiance, and a tragic end. 𝐬𝐿's journey in law enforcement began in 2015 when she joined the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office as a jailer. At just 21 years old, she was determined to build a career defined by service and dedication. She quickly became known for her work ethic, reliability, and ability to handle difficult situations in the jail. Over the years, her consistent performance earned her promotions, and by 2021, she had risen to the rank of corporal. For 𝐬𝐿, it seemed like her professional life was on the right track. Her hard work did not go unnoticed. In March 2023, the department publicly recognized her as Employee of the Month. A photo of 𝐬𝐿, smiling proudly in her uniform, was posted on the sheriff's office's social media pages, asking the community to congratulate her on this achievement. The comments were filled with praise from colleagues, friends, and community members who admired her dedication and professionalism. To many, she represented the kind of officer every department hopes to have. But while 𝐬𝐿 excelled at work, her personal life was far more complicated. Since 2018, she had been involved in an on-again, off-again relationship with Terrell Douglas, a man whose life stood in stark contrast to hers. Douglas, 28, had an extensive criminal history that included arrests for drug-related offenses and other felonies. His record painted a picture of a man who frequently found himself on the wrong side of the law. Despite his background, 𝐬𝐿 continued to see him, even as her colleagues and supervisors raised concerns. By 2019, 𝐬𝐿's relationship with Douglas had become a matter of official scrutiny. The Rockdale County Sheriff's Office launched an internal investigation after it became clear that her association with Douglas violated department policies. These policies explicitly prohibited employees from associating with individuals of questionable character, including those with a known history of criminal activity. For a law enforcement officer, such relationships posed risks, not just to their reputation but also to the integrity of the agency they represented. The investigation concluded with a written reprimand. 𝐬𝐿 was warned to end her relationship with Douglas immediately, and for a time, her supervisors believed she had complied. She continued to perform well at work, and the matter was considered resolved. But in reality, the relationship didn't end. Instead, it continued in secret, with Jackson managing to keep it hidden from her colleagues for the next few years. By early 2023, the truth about Jackson and Douglas's relationship resurfaced, sparking another internal investigation. This time, the situation was more serious. Investigators learned that Douglas had moved into Jackson's home in January, rekindling their relationship. This raised alarm bells within the department. Not only was Jackson in violation of the same policy she had been reprimanded for in 2019, but her decision to allow Douglas to live with her also created a dangerous situation. As a convicted felon, Douglas was prohibited by state and federal law from being in proximity to firearms. Yet, by living with Jackson, he had access to her agency-issued weapons, a direct violation of the law. When questioned by investigators, Jackson provided a timeline that suggested her relationship with Douglas had only recently been rekindled. However, evidence uncovered during the investigation contradicted her claims. This dishonesty was a serious violation of the department's code of conduct, which held officers to high standards of integrity. By May 2023, her superiors had reached the conclusion that Jackson's actions and decisions were grounds for termination. Facing the likelihood of being fired, she made the decision to resign on May 31, 2023. In the days that followed, Jackson's resignation marked the end of her law enforcement career, but it was far from the end of her story. Just 4 days later, on June 4, police in Clayton County responded to a shooting at the South Lake Cove apartment complex. There, they found Douglas, gravely injured from a gunshot wound, near the entrance of the building. He was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries shortly after. The investigation would reveal that Jackson had been at the scene, and witnesses reported a heated argument between the two just moments before the shooting. By June 6, Jackson turned herself in to authorities, surrendering the firearm she allegedly used in the fatal encounter. The contrast between Jackson's professional success and her troubled personal life raises difficult questions. What led her to make decisions that ultimately cost her career and, allegedly, another person's life? Could this tragedy have been avoided if the warnings from her department had been taken more seriously, or if Jackson herself had made different choices? Now, we ask you, do you think 𝐬𝐿 should have ended the relationship earlier, or was she justified in standing by Douglas despite his criminal past? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. June 4, 2023, began like any other day, but it would soon take a deadly turn that no one could have predicted. Terrell Douglas, 28, was visiting a friend at the South Lake Cove apartment complex in Clayton County, Georgia. It was supposed to be a casual visit, an ordinary moment in his routine. But what happened next would leave a man dead, a former deputy accused of murder, and a community shocked by the tragedy. At some point during the evening, 𝐬𝐿 arrived at the apartment complex. Accounts from witnesses suggest that her visit wasn't planned. It's unclear what prompted her to go there, but when she arrived, an argument broke out between her and Douglas. Those who overheard described it as heated, the kind of argument where voices rise and emotions run high. What started as words quickly escalated into something far more serious. As the argument unfolded, the situation took a violent turn. At some point, Jackson pulled out a gun. Whether it was brought in anger, fear, or desperation is a question investigators and the public have wrestled with. What is clear is that a shot was fired, and when it was over, Douglas lay gravely wounded near the entrance of the apartment building. Emergency calls flooded into 911 as witnesses reported the shooting. When police arrived at the scene, they found Douglas barely clinging to life. He was rushed to the hospital, but the injuries proved fatal. He died shortly after arriving, leaving behind unanswered questions about what had led to this tragic outcome. There was one glaring absence at the crime scene: 𝐬𝐿. By the time officers arrived, she was nowhere to be found. Her absence only deepened the mystery. Why had she left? Where had she gone? And most importantly, what had truly happened during that argument? For 2 days, there was no sign of Jackson. The investigation pressed on, with authorities piecing together the events leading up to the shooting. Then, on June 6, she walked into the police station and turned herself in. Jackson surrendered the firearm she allegedly used in the incident, offering it as evidence. This single act provided investigators with a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it also raised more questions than it answered. Was this an act of premeditation, a calculated decision driven by deeper conflicts in their relationship? Or was it a crime of passion, a moment of anger and emotion spiraling out of control? The circumstances leading to the shooting have been debated ever since, with no definitive answers to the motivations behind that night. The crime scene at South Lake Cove told its own story. Bloodstains near the entrance of the building marked where Douglas had fallen. When police arrived at the South Lake Cove apartment complex on June 4, 2023, the scene was chaotic. Witnesses described hearing a loud argument before the sound of a gunshot. Officers immediately began interviewing those who had seen or heard what happened. Some recalled heated words exchanged between 𝐬𝐿 Jackson and Terrell Douglas, painting a picture of a relationship fraught with tension. Others recounted past incidents that suggested their relationship was far from stable. The investigation moved quickly as officers collected evidence from the scene. Blood near the apartment entrance marked the spot where Douglas had collapsed. Shell casings were recovered, and photographs documented every detail of the area. Forensic teams analyzed the evidence, hoping to piece together what occurred in those final moments. The firearm Jackson later surrendered was sent for ballistics testing to confirm whether it matched the weapon used in the shooting. Statements from friends and acquaintances began to shed light on the volatile nature of Jackson and Douglas's relationship. Some described their bond as intense, marked by frequent arguments and reconciliations. Others mentioned the strain of Douglas's criminal past, which often clashed with Jackson's role as a law enforcement officer. This conflict appeared to be a recurring theme in their time together. As the investigation continued, the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office issued a brief statement, noting that Jackson was no longer employed there. The department took steps to distance itself from the case, pointing out that Jackson had resigned just days earlier amid an internal investigation. Her certification as a law enforcement officer was swiftly suspended by the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. This development added another layer of complexity to the case, as it raised questions about the timing of her resignation and whether it was connected to the events that followed. As investigators dug deeper, inconsistencies in Jackson's previous statements about her relationship with Douglas began to emerge. During earlier investigations by the sheriff's office, she had downplayed the extent of their connection, claiming it had ended when, in reality, it had continued. This dishonesty became a focal point for both law enforcement and public opinion. If she had been untruthful before, could she be trusted now? One of the most concerning aspects of the case was the risk posed by Douglas's presence in Jackson's home. As a convicted felon, he was prohibited from being near firearms under both state and federal law. Yet, by living with Jackson, he had access to her agency-issued weapons. This detail raised serious questions about the choices she made and whether they contributed to the tragic outcome. Despite the mounting evidence, there were no easy answers. Was this a tragic accident fueled by a heated argument, or did deeper issues within their relationship lead to the fatal encounter? The community was left grappling with these questions as the investigation unfolded. Now, we turn the question to you. Do you believe law enforcement failed to intervene effectively in this case? Could more have been done to prevent this tragedy, or were the warning signs simply overlooked? Share your thoughts in the comments below. With 𝐬𝐿 Jackson behind bars and Terrell Douglas gone, questions began to surface about what led to that fatal night. Investigators and the public were left to piece together the motives behind Jackson's actions. Was this an act of self-defense, or had tension in their relationship finally reached a breaking point? Some argue that the events of June 4 were the result of escalating conflict. Witnesses described their relationship as tumultuous, filled with arguments and reconciliation. For years, Jackson faced warnings about the risks of being with Douglas, but she stayed with him. Did this create an emotional strain that exploded during their argument that night? Could fear or frustration have played a role in her decision to draw a weapon? Others believe that Jackson's actions might not have been spontaneous. Just days earlier, she had resigned from the sheriff's office, ending a career she had worked so hard to build. Her resignation followed investigations into her relationship with Douglas, raising questions about whether this choice added pressure to an already fragile situation. Did the loss of her career, combined with their personal struggles, set the stage for the tragedy? Or was her arrival at the South Lake Cove apartments that evening planned, knowing Douglas would be there? Controversy also surrounds whether more could have been done to prevent the outcome. Internal investigations into Jackson and Douglas's relationship dated back to 2019, and her superiors knew of the risks. Despite reprimands and warnings, the relationship continued. Should stricter action have been taken when her connection to Douglas first came to light? Could early intervention have saved both lives? The legal case will hinge on the evidence, but in the court of public opinion, the debate continues. Was this a moment of self-defense, or did years of tension culminate in an act of premeditation? Was the shooting inevitable given their history, or could it have been avoided altogether? Based on the evidence so far, what theory do you believe best explains the events? Was this a crime of passion, or was there more to the story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. After 𝐬𝐻 Jackson surrendered to police on June 6, she faced serious charges, including malice murder, stalking, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Her arrest marked the end of her brief time as a free woman after the shooting of Terrell Douglas. The gun she handed over became a key piece of evidence, linking her directly to the fatal shot. The legal process began almost immediately. Investigators worked to establish a clear timeline of events and motives, while prosecutors built their case around witness statements, forensic evidence, and Jackson's connection to the crime. Her resignation from the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office and her prior violations of department policy only added weight to the narrative that she had made decisions that placed her in direct conflict with the law. For Douglas's family, the loss was devastating. They mourned a young man whose life was cut short and grappled with the complexity of his relationship with Jackson. Publicly, some family members expressed frustration, questioning how the situation had been allowed to escalate over time. Others remained silent, processing their grief privately. Jackson's colleagues at the sheriff's office were also left to reflect on the case. For many, it was difficult to reconcile the image of an officer once celebrated for her dedication and professionalism with the woman now facing such grave accusations. Her fall from grace raised uncomfortable questions within the department about how such situations are handled. Were the warnings and reprimands enough, or should stronger actions have been taken earlier? The broader implications extended beyond Jackson and Douglas's story. Law enforcement agencies were once again forced to confront how personal relationships and professional responsibilities intersect. Policies about associations with individuals of questionable character became a central focus, as departments across the country looked for ways to prevent similar tragedies. This case left a lasting mark on everyone involved. It's a story of loss, choices, and consequences, one that continues to raise difficult questions. What does this case say about accountability, both personal and institutional? Was justice served, or are there lessons still to be learned? 𝐬𝐻 Jackson's story forces us to reflect on the delicate balance between personal relationships and professional responsibilities. As a law enforcement officer, Jackson had dedicated years to serving her community, but her choices outside of work led to devastating consequences that rippled far beyond her own life. Love and loyalty collided with duty, and the outcome was tragic for everyone involved. For Terrell Douglas's family, the pain of losing him will never fade. His life, complicated as it may have been, was cut short, leaving behind memories and unanswered questions. For Jackson's family and former colleagues, there is a sense of loss as well, a career filled with promise and respect that ended in a courtroom rather than in retirement. This case highlights the challenges faced by those in positions of authority, where personal choices can sometimes blur professional boundaries. It also raises difficult questions about accountability within law enforcement. Were the policies in place enough to prevent this tragedy, or did the system fail to act when it was most needed? The long-term impact extends beyond these two families. It is a reminder that decisions, no matter how personal, carry consequences. It's a story of how one moment can unravel years of dedication, and how relationships, no matter how complex, can influence every aspect of life. What do you think this case teaches us about the balance between personal relationships and professional ethics? Could anything have been done differently to avoid this tragic outcome? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this case made you think about the complexities of love, duty, and tragedy, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more true crime stories to light, stories that challenge us to question the choices people make and the impact they leave behind. And don't miss our next episode, where we'll unravel a case of betrayal and deceit that left an entire community searching for answers. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.